Hey everyone, Gill Gross here post-match. Taylor Fritz versus Novak Djokovic, US Open 2025 quarterfinals. If you're not here for spoilers, click off the video. Djokovic over Fritz in 4 to advance to yet another US Open semifinal and improve his lifetime head-to-head. 11-0 against the American. Hello again from my New York hotel room. I had the absolute pleasure of being inside Arthur Ashe Stadium on behalf of US Open Radio for this match. What an enjoyable one. Highly dramatic, very, very gripping, fascinating match in many, many ways. So let's get into it. The overall number one point here, and this was the match. It was the big point, nerve management. I mean, this decided the match. The scoreboard was Novak Djokovic's best friend, and it was Taylor Fritz's worst enemy. We'll talk about the tactics in this match. It was a masterful execution of a game plan from Djokovic, but as far as what really separated him from his opponent tonight, it wasn't that. It was the fact that Djokovic, and this is the one ability that he's always had as a tennis player that is probably the most important one out of all of it, like more important than his return and more important than his movement and his flexibility and all of the things that we kind of think about Djokovic as being all-time great at. I've always put this number one. He will access the full breadth of his tennis capabilities on the big points. He will. Taylor Fritz did not tonight. And that really was the difference. I mean, in the first set, Taylor had break points in at least 3 separate Djokovic service games. And he ended up going 0 for 6 on break points in the first. And one break ended up being the difference. Djokovic won at 6-4. In the second set, Fritz continued to struggle on converting break points, but on number 11, on break point number 11, he finally comes through and he actually breaks Djokovic serving for a 2-sets-to-love lead. And it becomes 5-all. And at 5-all, Taylor couldn't handle the success. He immediately plays his worst service game of the match, throws in 2 double faults that were both ugly. He only had 1 double fault coming into the match. And suddenly, as soon as it was like, okay, it's 5-all and I'm back in it, and he wasn't fighting from behind back against the wall, which is a totally different thing, as I'll discuss in a second, Fritz played super, super tight, like deceleration tight. So then he goes down 2-sets-to-love. Obviously, Novak wasn't going to get broken for a second time trying to serve for a 2-sets-to-love lead. In the third set, this is where, predictably, Taylor relaxes. Right now you're down 2-0. Pressure's basically off. Pressure's off for Novak, too, so, it's kind of a two-way street. Both players can relax a little bit. Fritz wins the third set. Then let's skip to the fourth. Taylor was dominant as far as how easy he was holding. Dominant on serve in the third and the fourth sets. He was holding easily. First serve win rate for the match, as we got late in the fourth set, was actually hovering around 90%. And he got in a really good service rhythm where he was making a lot of first serves. But Djokovic had some solutions to hang on to his serve. Again, we'll get to that. At 4-5, suddenly at 4-5, you just got a feeling. You were just, I know I did. I was sitting next to Andrea Petkovic. She did as well. You're just like, this is going to be a tough one. And it was. As soon as the scoreboard applied a little pressure, Fritz ended up, well, let's go through the game, right? Because this is the game. By the way, I thought this was, at this stage, this was a match that was up for grabs based on how they were playing. Like sometimes a match that goes 2-0 one way and then 2-1, and then the player wins in 4. Sometimes it's a little bit misleading as a close match. This match, to me, actually felt like it was hanging in the balance during the fourth set, because I think Fritz was, again, holding comfortably and applying, all match long, he was applying plenty of pressure on Djokovic's serve. Anyway, let's go through this game, because this is the most important game of the match at 4-5 in the fourth. So Taylor hits a tight +1 backhand unforced error on a floating return. He missed it long by a lot. On the next point, Djokovic was tremendous in his defense, especially a sliding forehand that he made from the back fence with depth, and the depth ended up forcing the error. Really vintage Novak. Now, as I watched that point unfold, before Taylor hit a big forehand that Djokovic played that miraculous defense on, I was just like, oh my God, drop shot. Like, the drop shot is just wide open. Wide. Like, if Taylor hit a drop shot winner, I don't care. Any drop shot would have been a winner. It was just wide open. Taylor didn't really see it. Djokovic was on the back fence, and Fritz was just blasting away. But credit to Novak, unreal defense. The third point Djokovic wins in this game was also an awesome running forehand cross court, tons of pace, and the pace forced the error. Great running forehand by Djokovic. We'll talk about the running forehands in a moment, because that was a key, okay? Now, Taylor got this game to deuce. He won 3 lung busters. He won 3 points in this game just by going lockdown. And I think on all 3, he might have gotten backhand misses from Djokovic, or maybe only on 2 out of the 3. But Fritz, with his back against the wall in this game to save 2 match points, was great. Which is why somebody might push back on me and say, wait, you're saying that Taylor didn't play the big points well, but he saved those 2 match points. No. Totally different mental dynamic. When your back is against the wall and you're desperate, you have to win the point to stay alive. That feels very different than I have a chance now to take a lead. And it's the latter that Fritz struggled with throughout the match, not the former. Like a break point. When you have a break point, that's not back against the wall. That's front runner. That's your chance to do damage in the match. That's where Taylor struggled. Okay, anyway. Because of the lung-busting rallies, Djokovic actually goes for a really high-risk, low-percentage backhand down the line, almost makes it, misses it, and Fritz ends up having a game point. Taylor plays this point well. He actually makes a first serve. More on that in a moment as well. Taylor hits a drop shot. The drop shot was available. Djokovic was very deep in the court. But Fritz, from the mid-court, hit the drop shot, and then he backed up. He backed up from just around the service line, which you rarely see a tennis player do. Normally, there's no backing up unless you get lobbed. Taylor hit the drop shot, backed up, ended up in no man's land. Djokovic dug it out. Great running by Novak again, who was just digging so deep here. And Taylor missed a pretty wide open backhand lob. When I say wide open, I just mean Novak was on top of the net. Like really, really on top of the net. So the lob was a good shot selection there, and it was one that Fritz probably should have made. However, if you switched places and it was Djokovic who'd hit that drop shot, there's no way he's backing up. He's following it into the net, and he's knocking away what would have been an even easier either lob volley or put away volley into the open court off of the drop shot retrieval. That's what a player who was more confident in that part of the court would have done, undoubtedly. So then it was back to deuce, and Djokovic, Fritz hit a pretty mediocre first serve that got neutralized. Novak with a great sliding backhand to get to neutral off of a good Fritz inside-out forehand. And then Novak got a chance to really rip a backhand, and he went full power, big target cross court, again forced an error with pace into the Fritz backhand, which was actually rare in this match. It's very hard to bother Fritz into his backhand with pace. On the match point, Taylor hit a double fault that was an ugly one, not even close. And Fritz only double faulted 5 times in this match, but I've brought it up twice already in this summary of the big moments, of the key moments, which tells you something, right? Like there's 3 double faults in just the key games that I'm describing, but only 5 for the match. One thing that Novak did on the 3 double faults I've described is he's actually moved back. He's retreated in his return position suddenly. Like 90% of the match, he was up on the baseline for second return. And then on these big points, he would suddenly go way back. Clearly, he knew something. He found a tendency with Taylor that he can get tight and start to really decelerate and roll his second serve when opponents move back on the second. So Djokovic decided to basically unveil that position on these big points, and it totally psyched out Taylor. A stroke of genius tactically for Novak, because those double faults were partially earned, although also just... I think if Novak did that on an ordinary point, it wouldn't have worked. I think it also had to do with the magnitude of the points that Djokovic decided to do that on. And that's where Taylor hit those decelerating double faults. Fritz was ruthlessly efficient when he landed his first serve for most of the match. He only made 4 out of 10 in this 4-5 game, and he started by making 2 of 2. So there was a real string of missed first serves in that game as well. And you could just feel it coming, because the whole match, it was just big points he dips, big points Taylor dips, and Djokovic actually does the opposite. Novak played a lot of those break points extraordinarily well, especially on the forehand. Like there were some real God mode forehand moments by Novak. There were also some examples, like there was one break point in the first set where Taylor had a rally ball forehand that he just totally babied. It was 15-40. I forget what game it was, but it was a 15-40 point average rally ball forehand for Taylor, and he completely babied it into the middle of the court. And then Djokovic stepped up and crushed a forehand to take control, I think win the point outright off of that shot. So one more thing on this. Where's the why here with Fritz? Because I thought Taylor played really well tonight. The one disappointing thing was how nervous he got when it counted, seemingly. For somebody who's number 4 in the world and made the final here last year, it's one thing when it's like Lerner Tien, nighttime at Ash in the first round against Novak. Like if he's overwhelmed, you get it. You're just like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But for Taylor, you don't really expect that. So what is it? To me, it's the head-to-head. Like that's my only explanation. I think Djokovic spooks Taylor Fritz, because I thought that Fritz, who for portions of his career definitely struggled with big point nerve management, I felt he's mostly been past that for a decent chunk of time now. But the 0-10 is the only thing I could think of. Like I can't think of another explanation why after breaking in the second set and getting to 5-all, suddenly Fritz would just get so tight in the arm at that moment after finally breaking. I don't understand it, other than he's 0-10 against Djokovic and he just struggles to get over the line in any capacity when Novak's on the other side of the net, because he's scarred by the head-to-head stranglehold. That's all I have really on that. Let's get to the tactics though. So the big thing that Djokovic was emphasizing was going hard into Fritz's forehand, serving hard into Fritz's forehand, first and second serve, that was where Novak went on all of the big points. And it worked brilliantly in the first set, like really, really well in the first set. I thought a lot of the reason why Djokovic just kept digging himself out of holes over and over and over again is because when he basically had such an effective serve strategy, even on the second serve, to go hard into Taylor's forehand return. Now, you may be thinking, Gill, weren't you just praising Taylor at Wimbledon for having this awesome forehand block return? Well, he wasn't hitting that one. He was not hitting the power block return from close. He was hitting the drive forehand return from deep. And I think that's out of respect for Djokovic's +1 forehand. He doesn't feel like he can block against Novak because it's too clinical on the +1. Is that definitely a correct theory? Well, not definitely, but is there some sound logic to it? Yes, there is, absolutely. So he feels like he needs to do a little bit more on the return. But it was pretty leaky in the first set, and Djokovic hits that serve better than anybody. The hard slice serve, how precise he is on that serve when he's looking to achieve even width on it. Nobody hits that serve better than Novak right now. I really don't believe so. A righty slice serve at the righty forehand. Who hits their spots more consistently on that serve? Nobody. I think Djokovic is king of that right now. So Fritz was struggling with that for actually more than the first set. It wasn't until the last game of the second set when Fritz finally broke where he hit two big effective forehand returns because he was sitting on that, because he knew it was going there, and he actually cheated that way and got it done on the forehand return. But in rally, same thing. Whenever Novak had a chance to inject pace, like big pace, it was always at the forehand. Whether it be, okay, I can step into a backhand down the line, or I have a mid-court ball, or a middle ball on the forehand that I can really get into. It was all at Fritz's forehand. And Novak is so good at this, picking apart the modern player. Most players are now in the mold of Taylor Fritz. They have a backhand that's very stable and absorbs pace well. They have a forehand that's a big weapon and a great generator, but it's vulnerable against pace and even width. Either one. And under extreme pressure, sometimes even depth, I'm going to throw depth in there. Under the extreme pressure of depth, pace, width, Fritz's forehand wasn't holding in this match. And Djokovic was taking advantage of that and picking it apart. And just for contrast, it's the one thing that Novak, it's so underrated about Novak's forehand, and the reason why his forehand is elite, one of the reasons his forehand is elite, not because it's the flashiest offensive weapon on the tour, because it's not, but it is such a shield for Novak when he needs it to be, whether he's running hard into that deuce corner or if he's absorbing something hard right at him. It doesn't matter. That forehand is just kind of impenetrable. And on the backhand, yeah, okay, that he has too. But most players have the big generaty, scary, weapony forehand, but when you pressurize it with quality, it doesn't hold up. Taylor kind of has that. And what are the reasons? I don't know. Fritz has a very light racket. It's harder to absorb pace with a light racket. He's got a Western grip. I think it's harder to absorb pace with a Western grip. I think it helps when you get time on the ball and you get to take a full-blooded rip. I think the extreme grip is fine for that, but when he really has to, especially when he's stretched out, I think the Western grip hurts him there. Are there other things technically that I'm not smart enough to really explain right now? Probably. What else? So I wrote kind of in my notes, attacking the modern forehand. It's something Djokovic does so well. Let's talk about Djokovic's physicality. Oh, well, is this important? Let me just say this, by the way. Djokovic is so good on lower leverage points, of mixing up. So what I just said about going at Fritz's forehand, on a lower leverage point, you saw on a second serve, kick to the backhand or slice to the body, slice to the backhand body. He's so good at hiding his preferred tactic until he really needs it. And then he goes to the A game or the A plan. And that's why sometimes it feels like Djokovic is doing the same thing over and over again without being predictable. It's because he's choosing his spots so well. So just wanted to add that in. Djokovic's physicality. It doesn't look great. It still seems like something he has to manage. Where do I begin? In the long points, Fritz looked fresher by the end of it. I think we saw that in the last game, but when the points extended, Taylor's legs held up a little bit better. Body language after the points, it was never really close between the two. Novak always looked like he was feeling it more. Djokovic is constantly stretching, and I know Novak loves to stretch. Everybody knows that. It's to the point where he's obviously feeling stiff in the back, in the neck, because it's just all match long, every changeover, stretching, pressing on his diaphragm, like this chest thing, stretching out his abs, like he's just constantly tinkering. It feels like there's stuff that's uncomfortable. The cardio feels pressed. And I do think that, one of the interesting things that happened in this match, and I don't really have the answer on this, but Djokovic started serve and volleying a lot. He's so good at it. He's so good at it. It was highly efficient. It was a successful tactic. There is no doubt about that. But what was it motivated by? That's an interesting question. Djokovic said after the match, and I think this was clear to anybody watching, there was a certain point, especially after the first set, where the rallies just felt very even. The ball striking felt kind of even. Actually, in the second set, it didn't. But in the third set, when Fritz's forehand came on a little bit better, then the ball striking exchanges seemed a little bit more even. I thought Djokovic lost a little bit of energy in his movement. Now, when he had to dig deep, you would never see that. Like on a big point, when there was blood in the water, you would never see that. But on a point in, point out basis, I think he lost a little bit of energy. He started serving volleying constantly. Was that a fatigue-driven tactic? In other words, was it a tactic motivated by the concept of winning points by shortening points? Was there an element of preservation? Okay, you kind of get what I'm saying? That's a question that we'll never know the answer to, but I think it's a strong possibility, because if Djokovic thought that it was like a great idea to serve and volley against Fritz as far as it being a go-to tactic, I think we would have seen it more in the first two sets. Like, why did we start seeing that so much in the fourth if it wasn't Novak feeling as if he wanted to save his legs a little bit? But again, the other thing that's totally true, he was serving volleying masterfully well. So well. The physicality right now is average at best, but it's still, he's still playing at an extraordinarily high level. Those two things have to be true at the same time. For beating Alcaraz, yeah, like, what's good? Is it concerning a little bit when I was watching him today and it looked like the rallies where he had to defend a lot was taking so much out of him? Yeah, a little bit for the semis. And I think that's what Djokovic is concerned about. And I think he said that after the match. Didn't he say, I don't know how my body's going to hold up or how my body's going to feel in a couple days? I mean, ultimately, that's what concerns Novak. And that's what should concern everybody who wants Novak to win. It's mostly the physicality, because I don't think he's worried about going skill for skill with Alcaraz. But it's just 38 years old. Does the body have enough? All right. I think I've hit everything that I wanted to hit. Um, yeah, I think so. There's other stuff, maybe, but the big points I think I've hit. And I'm 25 minutes in, and it is 2 o'clock in the morning. So hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.